Hi. So in today's video, I'll be telling you more about my drawing teacher, Jacek Kucaba. Um, when I started to go to drawing classes, I might have been around 13 years old. Because around that time I gave up Camille for Mati, so that was around 13. And Jacek would sometimes give us lectures about Katarzyna Kozyra or, other artists. Um, he would tell us that he had a house in the mountains in the shape of a pyramid. So I always wanted to go there because he would tell stories that, his groups would go there. And he would always say that maybe we would go there too, but we somehow never did. And But we did one thing for sure. We went to the Catholic planner in English is like the outings, the trip, which is focuses on the group of people who are artists who go together to paint or to draw. So we have that trip to actually to some. So we would. Oh, it's complex. So we would paint in the forest, and we would sleep at school in the gym, and we would eat by the church. So there were some priests who would host us, and we would have some really really nice meals. Carrot soup. Um, so during that outing, we were walking in the forest and we were looking at his Jacek's art that would depict the cross road. It's the type of the road that Joshua Jesus went through. So there would be stations with crosses, and they were really gigantic, and they would have this circle in the middle, and they were much bigger than I was, and they were all black, very very monumental with the circle in the inside. So we're walking in the forest and we're looking at those crosses, and we're listening to him speaking, and I just remember looking at the flower because I would be more into trees generally, but somehow I just remember I stood there and I looked at the flowers, and it's like, oh, what a beautiful flower. And now I have the strong association with flowers and the practice of keeping them in the windowsills, and girls in Holland standing on the windowsills. So during that outing, I painted a picture entitled "Making a Decision." Which is very intriguing because it was just a picture depicting a woman sitting under the tree, and there was this light coming at her from probably from the sun, because where would that light come from? So, um, and that's probably not relevant, but we had a friend from Pacanów. I also remember from that outing that there were lots of people and there was lots of silence. If you wanted to talk to someone, then there was no one to talk to actually. So there was this barbecue or something, the evening meeting, and there were plenty of people, but yet no essence in that meeting. And sometimes we had some activities, tasks to make, like depict in a geometrical shape, depict something in a geometrical shape. So you look at the model, and instead of drawing him as he is, we exchanged what we see into geometrical shapes into triangles, rectangles, circles, ovals, and so on. Um, here's my theory. I learned from Sadhguru that if you want to influence somebody else's geometry, the way they look, it's enough that you actually manipulate their geometry. So you can do that based on having their photo. I don't know how, but somehow it's going to be about, possibly it's going to be about you drawing them differently than they are. I don't know. How that practice looks in detail with changing somebody else's geometry. One time we're supposed to draw a model from two sides, so as if to make a composition and to depict the same person on one piece of paper. We depicted that person twice. So you had to put two elements as if in relation to each other, which was an interesting task for me. And I think I actually made it well. And there was this request, that, I mean, it wasn't a request, but he would often talk about, large format paintings, because in that atelier in Youth Palace, we were surrounded with large format paintings depicting the tomato soup in the can by Andy Warhol, or depicting, this machine that you use to make pasta. That old machine, very, very old device that you have to make it spin, and then it makes this pastry into noodles, or this pasta. And it would depict actually that people were coming, not the cake, but people were coming into that machine. So within that, there was an idea that we could do that too, and I wanted to do that big format paintings. So my project, I was actually the only person who made a project, and my project was very, very easy and very, very simple, and it would just depict a hand that kept, the sun. Was obviously a different format, because the format was, narrower, so but it was something like that, very, very simple, very, very concrete, very exact, very simple. And at that time I even thought that maybe it wasn't even, nicely thought over project, but today I'm happy that it was such a project. And I was told that no one else made a project. And actually, there were people coming there who were preparing for their studies. So I don't understand, what does that mean that I was the only one who made that, because, artists like painting and a new size, and the painting on the wall, it's almost like a painting on the wall. It wasn't material, but it would be twice at least larger than you are. And as no one made the project, then I was just standing and drawing, and I was just going over the project in my head and thinking, oh, but how would I do it? So I asked, so how do you do that? How do you do that when it's, the size is bigger than you? So they told me that you build this web, and you just try to copy it in a bigger size. That's how you do it. And then I think about the letter, and I would follow the letter, and God knows what. But I think it's an exaggeration with that letter. So this idea of walking with the sun got back at me when I was working at McDonald's, and I was just discovering occultism, and I was looking at their practice, and I was looking at hypnosis, not knowing that this was hypnosis, not knowing that this is something you can come out of, and not knowing that this is gonna go away just with your willpower or something. I didn't know what was going on. So if you don't know, then well, then it's harder. If you know and you can name it, you can gain some information about it, then that knowledge diminishes your fear, of course. So I learned with time what I was looking at. But that sun got back at me at McDonald's when I was walking with, thinking that, oh, I discovered that, witches actually do exist. So I'm bringing people the sun. And the same was when I went to Tai Chi classes, and it was, closed at the gym, and they were doing it in the corridor. So I was thinking about the sun, that I'm bringing people the sun. And, I had a lot of memories. They were coming, and I was putting them together in the book. And it's somehow, got clearer that, oh, it was back then that I had this project. And then somehow the sun got back, the idea of the sun, the symbolism of the sun, and just keeping the sun as if in your hands. So sure thing, the sun is stands for clarity, for clarity, for the truth, for happiness, and it just seems like, as I watched The Godfather, and there was a man named Sani over there, or as I learned from Adam Barto's book, at the Jewish cemetery, it is stated that the sun was shining shamelessly, So it seems like, the gypsy used the symbolism of the sun on a lot of other cultures. Yeah. So we didn't do the paintings. We also learned with him, about illusions, about perspective shortcuts. Like if you look at the model and the model is sitting like that, then you have to draw their elbow so that here you have this illusion of uh, perspective illusion. I wanted to show it to you because it's easier to show that that's not the real size of my hand, but the entire hand appears to be shorter. So illusions are challenging to draw when it comes to those perspective shortcuts, so that they look like they are supposed to look. And actually, one of my friends just commented that Jacek didn't teach us anything about building the space. I know I told you in the video on symbolism about it, that he didn't teach us anything about building an illusion. He didn't teach us anything about building, building the line, building the background behind you, and make it different. Show it that this is the wall, and this is the material of the curtain, and this is the material of my blouse, right? Or polonek. So, and this is hair. So they have different fabric, different structure, a different line you would use to make a difference between them. So it's about making the picture more and more spacious. So he never did background, any feedback on that. And actually, that was true. Aga noticed it, and Aga said that, but I have to tell you that at least for 5 years, I haven't learned a word about that. But what I have learned about, the weight of the model or the composition, I think this was really professional. So I have learned actually something. When it comes to, his vocabulary. I mean, he used to repeat, Jacek used to repeat fuck, fuck, like ja pieprzę. And in Polish, it's not a strong um, word, but it's a word that you use it as shit, or you use it if you want to say that you have sex. The way we use it slightly differently, like pieprzyć się or pieprzyć się z kimś. So fucking as if, and he repeat that over and over. So sometimes it happened to me that I would repeat it in my mind, or I would repeat it after him. And it's just stunning that years later, when I had this, a phone, when I sent those naked photos to a married man, and I had the conversation with him, on the phone, not once, then I used those exact words. I mean, the words of Jacek. Um, and he told me, for example, there were some moments that I grasped. Um, 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 like he said that I could grasp the character of the model, and I didn't know what it meant, and he told me that I could depict the person who I was drawing. And in that moment, our model just raised her head and started to stare at me. But I actually heard a compliment, and I was happy. So I didn't know what was her expression all about. Like, she wasn't happy. And he also told me that I was walking with a half smile, and that was the truth. I was always just walking with this. I was walking with a smile, with reason or no reason. I would just be having this half smile on my face. And not once I just found myself over there thinking that I had nothing to say, or I didn't know what to say. And therefore, I would just, have a conversation with the model, Maria, who would just say that something about her cat. And I told her, oh, I closed the cat in the room because it was doing something. I don't remember. And she goes like, you can't close the cat alone. The cat is like a baby. It's like as if you close the baby alone in the room. So I got scared that I did something wrong. I said something stupid. I did something wrong. And then, the longer I think of it, then I think, so, do you take your cat with you when you go shopping? Do you take your cat with you when you go to the university or go to work? I don't know, because what she said was actually highly exaggerated, and I just, instead of pointing it out, and I think I don't know what to say and I'm scared, okay, it's just not me. I mean, but it's just not me. But when I was a little girl, I used to come back home, and my mother used to ask me what was at school, and supposedly I never knew. I never knew because of hypnosis. Yeah. And there's this contrast that, with my friends, somehow I had something to say, and somehow it never occurred in my mind that, oh, I don't know what to say. I could just somehow talk easily, and I could feel that I was, interesting, and that was very important back then. Yeah. And then with our model, Maria, here's a longer story where she recommended to me that I could go and work in Radiant Palace. And I was told when I worked there that I could take the money for face painting. The clients would pay 2 zloty for it, and I was paid for the hour, but very little. So I was told that, I could just buy a coworker. You could take some from the mag, the money that the clients pay you, because you just make this and this much money. So that's a little, but just don't tell anyone I told you. And I didn't at first, but then I had sex with my boyfriend, And I didn't know it back then, but I learned it from David Snyder that the easiest way to change somebody's neural, you know, I don't know if it's biochemistry or influence. The easiest way to hypnotize someone, oh yeah, the easiest way to hypnotize someone is to when you have sex with them, because then they are more prone to hypnosis. They can easily go into hypnosis. So right before going to work, we just had sex, and he drove me to work. And then, excuse me, I took some money from the mag. Not once I was seen. And then Przemek told me that he had been standing by the window where I worked, and he saw everything, not saying what. And he also somehow implied that I should give him the money, but he didn't say it explicitly. And he told me that he was watching with his friend, and I liked his friend more than him. So that he told me that so that I could feel more, even more ashamed. Of course, I was ashamed, and for a long time, yeah, sure thing. And that wasn't the only thing I did, because from Jacek's atelier, from Jacek Kucaba's atelier, I also took some paints. So, I was just walking all year long, repeating to myself that I will get into graphic design no matter what, no matter what, no matter what, no matter what. And, and during that time, I had this feeling, and I had this, somehow this awareness that maybe if I asked, if I could borrow the paints, if I could use the paints, take the paints, that probably I would be given the permission to do so. So there was totally no need to take them. And then a boy came to pose in from drawing classes, and he saw those paints, and he told me that he would take those too. And even my friend from drawing classes, Ola, came around, and she saw the paints too. So actually, what I have to tell you is that you're always seeing when you do something bad, it's actually designed in a way, in that way, so that first of all you would do it, second of all so that you would be seen, so that you would experience even more shame. um, yeah, so sure thing. I'm sorry, yeah, and I am ashamed of taking the paint and taking choose water from the mug, from uh, painting, doing the face painting. And the entire thing with paints was connected with keys, because I received the keys to the atelier, so I was the last one, the trusted one, to close it. And at the same time, our model Maria, she also gave me the keys to her own flat, because we were supposed to create a group of people who meet, and together we paint. So everybody, or draw. Everybody, as usual, is very, very willing to come, but we just met up once, and that was pretty much it. And that day when she gave me those keys, I learned she had two flats, and she was just like 25 years old, at most 30. So I was just stunned that such a young person had two flats, and she wasn't renting the second flat. She could just give us the keys, and we could just come around like that. And the story of the keys is a much longer, broader story, because I already told you about my English teacher Maria, who I was supposed to leave the keys for her when I was finishing the job, and I forgot. So Maria was on the way to my town to get the keys, and I was on the way to Krakow to leave the keys. But later I had the same with my boss Marek, and he was also on the way to Tarnów. Before I managed to offer that I would do so, I would come, he said, "No, I'm gonna go on the ride." And then when I lived with Magda and Isa, and I really had a difficult time with, a lot of illusions imposed on me. So, um, you know, uh, I believe they just stole the keys from the school I worked. So I don't want to give you the details which school, so that I don't expose the school. But the entire, there's just there were keys to two schools, two departments, and there were a lot of keys over there. So I was like, really, that this was really bad and unfair, because I believe it was stolen. And with regard to keys, I wrote myself that I have the keys to unlock your shame, and not once it happened that I would sit down to just think what I wrote and then go about it like thinking, oh, hey, there must be this automatic writing technique must be revealing, and your subconscious mind also speaks when you write and apply this automatic writing. So sometimes I would sit down to analyze my own writing too. And with keys, there was a lot with keys. So Ukrainian couple lived in the same building that I did, and they forgot their keys, and they were just checking with the keys. And as Ukrainian couple did that, who had their extrasensory perception developed, then I had a gypsy lady who wanted to see a doctor and asked me to open the door for her, just like I did to the Ukrainian couple, so that it would be double, which was a little bit unnecessary, but okay. And somebody also, yet in another flat that I lived in called Hamera Street, they just took the keys to the room from my home flat. So I had this key with me when I lived in Hamera, and the key was gone. And when I think about Jacek yet again, he created the poetry's bench, the bench of poets. And that bench standing in the city center of Tarnów, these are his words. And there are keys to that poetry. So, the poetry is locked with the key, and I'm just like wondering, like, why, like, how does that work in magic? I'm not so sure, but it's probably easy, when it's closed, it's closed. And when there is no key, then there is no key, right? Um, um, so, when it comes to the bench of poetry, it's just a little bit longer story with Jacek telling us that these sculptures have no feet, and he asked us if we have noticed, and actually nobody said anything. So basically, my observation was that I wasn't, looking most of the time, most of my life, when walking the very basic main street that I used to live in, that street even. So I wasn't looking at that bench of the poetry, but I sat on it once. And when sitting on it, I had this thought, oh, I'm doing this for Mr. Jacek. And maybe for Mr. Jacek, I should go and just, read the poetry, but I didn't do that. So, my impression was, like with the Gypsy Museum, that I didn't notice the physical building like standing, or I didn't notice the poetry bench, which is, actually that's seems like, a great achievement, seems like something physical. And this is what he said, it's standing in the city center of Tarnów, and it's undeniable fact. And most of my life I just was not looking at it. And at McDonald's, when I started to think about it, that I started to think about that art of the gypsy people who perform occultist practices, that art is invisible because it is earned. Somebody earned the place, not in the right way, and therefore as if it's there but nobody looks at it. That was my way of thinking when I worked at McDonald's. I think it still is my way of thinking, just based on the fact of my experience. I'm not telling you like this line is great and this one is bad because I know how to interpret it. I wasn't sitting to that particular bench of poets to actually do any interpretation. I wasn't interested in that. What I observed with my own, over the years and in my memories is that most of my life I wasn't looking at it like I wasn't seeing the physical building of the gypsy. Or like I was, going to the bars of the gypsy and they just happened to be empty most of the time. So therefore I thought that people who create illusions for other people, all they have is actually only illusions. Um, so that's it when it comes to the poetry bench. But when it comes to padlocks, we also have this bridge right in the city center, and on that bench, some people hand some padlocks. I hope you know what's a padlock. Kutka. And Jan Gomoa told me to hang my padlock of love over there. So I'm happy I didn't do at least that. But I think I didn't escape some other forms of magical practice. And when it comes to keys, the topic of keys, we have this Jewish cemetery. And when I lived with Magda and when I lived with Isa, so I used to go to, I used to walk by Promienna Szpitalna Street, and I just saw it every day. And it's closed, so the Jewish cemetery is closed with the keys, and you can go and visit, but you have to go to Adam Bartosz to get the key. So whenever I was walking back home from work, I just didn't see even one candle over there. And whenever I was going to St. Martin Hill, the old cemetery was always opened. I mean, yeah, during the daytime, of course, it was always open. And almost always there was a candle that was lit over there, So, the Jewish cemetery also have some trees, coming out of the coffins. I mean, it's in the city. It's not, where is it, city center? It's very, very close to the city center. Yeah. So it's a big contrast. And, maybe there is something about, the physical aspect of having it closed, like having as if Jewish history closed with it, you know? Yeah. Okay. Okay. So Piglet is for sale, and the price is changing, growing $1 every day. So you can have a better deal now. And the price of Amelia is also growing $1 every day. So you can have a better deal now. If you want to learn more about my book Piglet or my course Amelia, then you can find all the info in the description of the film on my website, on my Instagram, Facebook accounts. And if you like this video, please like, share, and subscribe.